Imagine being trapped in a world where every decision, every thought, and every emotion is dictated by a voice that isn't even yours. A voice that whispers lies, manipulates your perceptions, and controls your actions without you even realizing it. Sounds like the plot of a psychological thriller, right? But what if I told you that this is the reality for most people, and the voice I'm talking about is your own inner voice? Yes, you heard that right. Your inner voice, the one that's supposed to be your guiding light, your confidant, and your biggest supporter, might actually be working against you. In fact, a study conducted by psychologist Dr. Timothy Wilson from the University of Virginia found that our inner voice can be so influential that it can even change our behavior, often without us realizing it. For instance, if your inner voice is constantly telling you that you're not good enough, you might start to believe it and act accordingly, even if it's not true. But here's the thing. Most people are not even aware of the immense power their inner voice holds over their lives. A staggering 85% of people have an inner critic that is constantly criticizing and putting them down, according to a study by Dr. Kristen Neff from the University of Texas. This means that the majority of us are walking around with a constant companion that is tearing us down rather than building us up. And the worst part is, we often mistake this inner critic for our own voice, our own intuition, and our own wisdom. But what if I told you that this voice is not only lying to you, but also manipulating your perceptions, warping your reality, and holding you back from reaching your true potential? Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, a neuroscientist from Northeastern University, has found that our brains are wired to respond to our inner voice as if it were reality itself. This means that if your inner voice is telling you that you're a failure, your brain will start to believe it, and you'll begin to act like a failure, even if you're not. It's a vicious cycle, and one that can be incredibly difficult to break free from. But the first step is to become aware of this voice, to recognize when it's lying to you, and to start challenging its negative narratives. So, how does this inner voice develop in the first place? Well, it's a complex process that involves a combination of our upbringing, our experiences, and our environment. From a young age, we're constantly receiving messages from our parents, teachers, and peers about who we are, what we're capable of, and what we're worth. These messages can be positive or negative, but they all contribute to the development of our inner voice. For instance, if you were constantly praised and encouraged as a child, your inner voice might be more positive and supportive. On the other hand, if you were constantly criticized or belittled, your inner voice might be more negative and self-critical. And it's not just our early experiences that shape our inner voice. Our daily interactions and experiences can also influence it. For example, if you're constantly surrounded by negative people who bring you down, your inner voice might start to adopt their negative tone and language. But here's the thing. Our inner voice is not just a passive observer. It's an active participant in our lives. It's constantly interpreting our experiences, making judgments, and drawing conclusions. And often, these conclusions are based on incomplete or inaccurate information. For instance, if you have a bad day, your inner voice might tell you that you're a failure, that you're not good enough, and that you'll never succeed. But is that really true? Or is it just your inner voice's interpretation of a single event? Dr. Aaron Beck, the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy, has found that our inner voice often engages in cognitive distortions, such as all-or-nothing thinking, overgeneralization, and catastrophizing. These distortions can lead us to believe all sorts of negative and limiting things about ourselves, and they can hold us back from reaching our true potential. The good news is that we can change our inner voice, we can challenge its negative narratives, and we can develop a more positive and supportive inner dialogue. But it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes a willingness to confront our deepest fears and insecurities. It means being willing to question our assumptions, to challenge our negative self-talk, and to develop a more compassionate and realistic view of ourselves. And it's not just about feeling better. It's about becoming more aware of our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. It's about developing a greater sense of self-awareness and using that awareness to make positive changes in our lives. For example, if you notice that your inner voice is constantly criticizing you, you can start to challenge those criticisms by asking yourself if they're really true. You can start to develop a more balanced and realistic view of yourself, one that takes into account both your strengths and your weaknesses. As we begin to explore the ways in which our inner voice shapes our reality, we start to realize just how complex and multifaceted this process is. It's not just about our thoughts and emotions, but also about our behaviors, our relationships, and our environment. It's about how we interact with the world around us, and how we interpret the messages we receive from others. And it's about how we can use this awareness to create positive change in our lives, to overcome our limitations, and to reach our full potential. But as we delve deeper into this topic, we start to uncover some surprising truths about the nature of our inner voice, and the ways in which it can both help and hinder us. For instance, did you know that our inner voice can actually influence our physical health, our relationships, and even our financial success? It's a fascinating topic, and one that has far-reaching implications for our overall well-being. And as we continue to explore this topic, we'll start to see just how powerful our inner voice can be, and how we can harness that power to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life. But for now, let's just say that our inner voice is a mysterious and complex entity, one that is full of contradictions and surprises, and one that holds the key to unlocking our true potential. But only if we're willing to listen to it, to challenge it, and to transform it, which is exactly what we'll be exploring in the second half of this video, as we dive deeper into the ways in which our inner voice shapes our reality, and how we can use that knowledge to create positive change in our lives, starting with the simplest yet most profound question of all. What if your inner voice is lying to you, and you're not even aware of it? And what if that lie is holding you back from reaching your true potential? And what if? So, we've established that our inner voice has the power to shape our reality, but it's not always telling us the truth. In fact, it's often lying to us, and this can have serious consequences for our mental and emotional well-being. Let's take a closer look at how this works. Researcher Lisa Feldman Barrett has shown that our brains are wired to create stories about ourselves and the world around us. And these stories can be incredibly influential. But the problem is, these stories are often based on incomplete or inaccurate information, and they can lead us down a path of negative self-talk and self-doubt. For example, imagine you're at work and you make a mistake on a project. Your inner voice might start telling you that you're a failure, that you're not good enough, and that you'll never succeed. But is this really true? Probably not. You're just having a bad day, or maybe you're still learning and growing. The point is, our inner voice can be incredibly harsh and critical, and it's up to us to learn how to challenge and reframe these negative thoughts. Researcher Kristen Neff has shown that practicing self-compassion can be a powerful way to do this. By treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, we can begin to quiet the critical voice and develop a more realistic and positive sense of self. So, how can you start to challenge your inner voice and develop a more positive and realistic sense of self? One practical step you can take is to start paying attention to your thoughts and emotions throughout the day. Notice when your inner voice is being critical or negative, and challenge those thoughts by asking yourself if they're really true. For example, if your inner voice is telling you that you're a failure, ask yourself if that's really true. Have you failed at everything you've ever tried? Probably not. You've likely had successes and failures, just like everyone else. By challenging these negative thoughts and reframing them in a more positive and realistic way, you can start to develop a more compassionate and supportive inner voice. Another step you can take is to practice self-care and self-compassion. This can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths, going for a walk, or doing something you enjoy. By taking care of yourself and treating yourself with kindness, you can start to develop a more positive and supportive inner voice. For example, imagine you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. Instead of beating yourself up over it, you could take a few deep breaths and remind yourself that it's okay to feel this way. You could tell yourself that you're doing the best you can and that you'll get through this difficult time. By practicing self-compassion, you can start to develop a more positive and supportive inner voice that will help you navigate life's challenges with greater ease and confidence. A third step you can take is to start to focus on the present moment, rather than getting caught up in negative thoughts about the past or future. When we're caught up in negative thoughts, it's easy to get stuck in a cycle of rumination and self-doubt. But by focusing on the present moment, we can start to break free from this cycle and develop a more positive and realistic sense of self. For example, imagine you're at the grocery store and you start to feel anxious about all the things you need to do that day. Instead of getting caught up in those thoughts, You could focus on the present moment and notice the sights and sounds around you. You could notice the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sounds of the people talking, and the smell of the food. By focusing on the present moment, you can start to calm your mind and develop a greater sense of clarity and purpose. In addition to these steps, it's also important to remember that our inner voice is not always a reliable guide. Sometimes, it's influenced by our past experiences, our emotions, and our biases. So, it's up to us to learn how to separate fact from fiction and to develop a more nuanced and realistic sense of self. This can be a challenging process, but it's also incredibly liberating. By learning to challenge our inner voice and develop a more positive and realistic sense of self, we can start to live more authentic and fulfilling lives. We can start to pursue our passions and interests with greater confidence and clarity, and we can start to build more positive and supportive relationships with others. For instance, let's say you've always wanted to start your own business, but your inner voice is telling you that you're not good enough or that you'll fail. By challenging those thoughts and developing a more positive and realistic sense of self, you can start to pursue your dreams with greater confidence and clarity. You can start to see that your inner voice is not always telling you the truth, and that you have the power to create the life you want. By taking control of your inner voice and developing a more positive and realistic sense of self, you can start to unlock your full potential and live a more authentic and fulfilling life. In conclusion, our inner voice has the power to shape our reality, but it's not always telling us the truth. By learning to challenge our inner voice and develop a more positive and realistic sense of self, we can start to live more authentic and fulfilling lives. We can start to pursue our passions and interests with greater confidence and clarity, and we can start to build more positive and supportive relationships with others. By taking control of our inner voice and developing a more compassionate and supportive mindset, we can start to unlock our full potential and live the life we've always wanted. If this helped you see yourself differently, subscribe. I post new psychology insights every single day. And if you want to go even deeper, check the link in the description for Mindset by Carol Dweck. It changed how millions of people think and act.